Welcome, everybody. Welcome to episode number 114 of Fraternity Foodie. I am your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. We call these episodes Fraternity Foodie because there is nothing like great food to bring people together. I am so excited for this episode. You have no idea. All of you are in for such a huge treat. Today we have with us my good friend and the Chief Executive Officer of Kappa Alpha Theta, Betsy Corridan. She started working for Theta in August of 1983, which is just amazing to me. She welcomed me with open arms when I started working for my headquarters, and I'm so grateful for our friendship. And just yesterday, Theta celebrated their Founders Day. So happy Founders Day to all sisters of Theta as they celebrate a 151-year legacy of a welcoming, empowering, supportive place that all sisters are able to cherish in their own way. Welcome to the show, Betsy.
Oh, Mike, thank you. It's so good to see you.
Oh my God, it is so great to see you. It is so great to catch up with you. I love every minute of it, and I'm going to cherish this video and this interview for years and years. You have no idea.
we better be careful, Mike, because we could talk on for hours.
I know. Well, the audience is going to be is going to get the big reward if that's the case. So I'm fine with that. So let's give a little bit of background to our listening audience. You chose the University of Iowa for your undergraduate experience. So I'm wondering what made the University of Iowa the right choice for you?
You know, I've never thought of it that way, in that I was a townie, as we used to be called. I grew up in Iowa City, the home of the University of Iowa. And I suppose the question for me was, why wasn't it a good fit? A large research university, Big Ten, lots of sports, culture. Iowa has 3 state universities, with Iowa being the business, law, medicine school. I was interested in business. There was really no reason to leave the state. So I just always knew I would go to Iowa, and fortunately it was a good fit.
Yeah, I'm so glad that it worked out. Clearly, it did work out very well because you joined Kappa Alpha Theta fraternity there. So I'm wondering, what was special about this group of women in this particular chapter that made you want to join?
Well, the thing about, if you look at a large institution like Iowa, the fraternity and sorority system, I think, is a great opportunity for students to find a smaller tribe, a smaller community, to stay connected and build those relationships. So sorority recruitment was it for me. And gosh, great sororities there. The Thetas in particular, they were really smart. I think when I joined, they'd been #1 in scholarship for like 12 years, something like that. They were involved, talented. You just met them, and who wouldn't want to join if you had the opportunity? And I was really lucky to be invited. So yeah, it's a great deal.
That's amazing. And so obviously scholarship was very important to you because they were excelling in that area. So I think that's a good message for our fraternities and sororities to hear, the undergraduates. And I think we joined really for the same reasons. You know, I went to school at the University of Buffalo with 30,000 students there. And I think, you know, that's a little bit overwhelming when you think about it. But in a smaller community, I could thrive. And 30,000 people, I don't even know where to begin, to be quite honest.
Right. And growing up in that same town, some might think, well, you were so connected to the university, were you really leaving home? Well, my parents were in the Iowa City business community, connected to Iowa, but that wasn't their business. We didn't, strangely enough, I didn't know a lot about the campus, everything that goes on in running a community of a huge university. So I certainly did go away. There was a whole new world there in Iowa City.
I love it. That's really good. Now, let's talk a little bit about Kappa Alpha Theta, because this is the first Greek letter fraternity for women, and the founders were among the first women to be admitted to their institution as full college students. Now, here's what our audience needs to know. I'm going to school you right here. And you know all of this, Betsy. In
What?
1870, less than 1% of American women between the ages of 18 and 21 attended college at that time. Women would not gain the right to vote in the United States for 50 years. And it was widely held belief that academic studies were not only inappropriate, but actually unhealthy for women back in 1870. And the founders of Kappa Alpha Theta, they knew that they deserved more because they knew they deserved the same college experience as men. In creating Kappa Alpha Theta, the founders helped lead the way for women's groups and for women in higher education. Now, Betsy, you grew up the oldest of four daughters in Eastern Iowa, and you never saw any differences between men and women in terms of what you could accomplish, which is something that I really admire. That's really what I love about you. And I want my daughter to feel the same way. And so, did all of this come from your family upbringing? Did that come from the sorority experience, or is it all of the above?
Well, here's another note for you, Mike. It's important to remember that the University of Iowa was the first public school in the US to open equally to women and men in 1855.
Mm.
So from the beginning of that institution, we just want the best and the brightest. Y'all come, and gender doesn't matter. So generally speaking, I really think it's the culture, it's the common sense of Iowans. It sounds kind of hokey, but I really think that's it. For all the right reasons, it was a non-issue in Theta, at home and at school. This funny story that I still remember from way back in the day in 1984. My dad spent his entire professional career in banking. He led a community bank in Iowa City. So, and I remember he and my mom came to visit me in my newly adopted home of Indianapolis in 1984. He's a white, middle-aged male banker, and we were having lunch with some local Thetas from Indianapolis, and one of the women asked him this question, I think expecting to catch him out, asking him how many women served on the bank board. And he thought for a moment, and he offered his answer, 2 or 3, I don't remember the number, but she was stunned. And his response to her surprise was, well, you see, I simply want the best people for the job. And so it's just kind of a common sense thing. And so it still stuns me today that there is such an issue between the genders and how folks look at all of this.
Wow, that's fantastic that everything was aligned for you, family,
Yeah.
Iowa, the school, the sorority. I mean, everything was perfectly aligned for you, every single step. I think that's fantastic. And you're also very career minded, right? You've always been looking to pursue your own interests, your own accomplishments. You know, a little known fact, you stayed single until you were 38, you married Jim, and then you decided to start a family at the age of 40. So I'm just wondering, what made you choose that path?
Well, right. How weird is that? And I remember when we got pregnant, it was labeled geriatric. I'm like,
Mhm.
but anyway, that was just the technical terminology, I suppose. But, well, Mike, people marry for different reasons. I married for love and didn't meet Jim until I was 36. So, it just was what it was. With respect to being older parents, though, I'd say my folks paved the way there. My youngest sister was born when I was a junior in college, and making my parents, they were 40 and 41 years old at the time.
Mhm.
If she hadn't turned out so wonderfully and just, I mean, she is just wonderful. She's one of those young women now, almost 40, you want to grow up to be like her. But if that hadn't been such a wonderful experience, I would have been, I'm not sure I would have had the confidence to have not one, but two kids over the age of 40 years old. So we're really lucky. The boys are 17 months apart, and very different, but wonderful young men. And I guess everything just works out.
Yeah. Well, your boys are great. You have a lot to be proud of. And speaking of being proud of, I mean, you started working in August of 1983 for Theta. That's a run of over 37 years, which is remarkable considering all the turnover that we generally see today. And you were named executive director in 1997, CEO in 2015. What are you most proud of from this time that you've spent with Theta?
Wow. Well, you do wonder, why do people stay? When I traveled my first year for Theta out on the East Coast as we were starting new chapters out there, and then moved to Indianapolis in '84 when our headquarters moved here from Evanston, Illinois. And I thought, oh, Indianapolis would be fun. 2 years here. How cool would that be? Okay, so it'll be 39 when I say goodbye to Indy, but there's always been something to do. My number one talent in Strengths Quest is learner, and more specifically, continual improvement. So I guess change is just part of my DNA and wanting to continually make things better. A favorite quote of mine is from Henry Ford. He said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they'd have said a faster horse. So we have to listen to our members. But we have to do even more than that. And we need to look far into the future on behalf of our members to figure out what will work for Theta and the sorority and fraternity community. So I think the run has been so long because there has always been something to do. And as far as a moment professionally, I would have to say being part of the team that beat Harvard in its quest to blacklist students and take away their rights to choose to join private organizations. It's just such a fundamental right. And our students there, Theta was the first sorority there at Harvard over 25 years ago. And talk about a connection with our founders. The school was still male dominated. They needed a place for women to connect and support each other academically and personally. And to have that opportunity taken away, it was just tragic. And so it was wonderful to be part of that team that made all that happen. But a lot has happened in 37 years with Theta. And personally, other than meeting the man of my dreams and being parents to these two wonderful young men, I'd have to say I'm most proud of conquering depression. And that might seem really odd for someone who appears to be so successful personally and professionally. But when I was in my early 30s, the darkness took hold, and it's a darkness of your soul that just literally nearly kills you. And the fact that I was able to connect with the right people, do the appropriate things to get better and manage that wicked disease. I don't know, that's a pretty cool triumph. And of course I had the support of Theta in doing all that. But, and I think too, that conquest, if you will, helps shape the work I do. You can't forget, we all, especially young women, we want to do well, and sometimes we go a little overboard, and it's important to keep all that in check, and life isn't necessarily a competition every day.
Yeah. Thank you for being so open and honest about that. I think that's fantastic for our listeners to hear, because many times it could be an isolating thing when you're dealing with depression. But to know that there are people out there that are incredibly successful, that are also battling some of those same demons, I think is so important. Just recently on the Fraternity Foodie podcast, we interviewed Miss America, and everybody looks up to Miss America as, you know, somebody who's got to be perfect, must have the perfect life and all of these things. But yet she was
Right.
really honest about some of the issues that she deals with in terms of depression and body image and all of these things that women are going through, and men for that matter. And so I think it's just refreshing to know that people who have reached the pinnacle of their careers, they also battle these same demons that all of us
Oh,
have.
wow.
So
Sure.
yeah, that's
You
really great.
bet.
I'm so grateful that you share all of that.
Oh,
Uh,
sure.
yeah, and you know, you also served as president of the Fraternity Executive Association, FEA, as we call it in the business. Talk to us about the interfraternal friendships that you have, and how has that influenced you over the years?
Oh my gosh. Oh, well, as you know, this is an interesting industry, and to lead a national, international fraternity or sorority is unique, and a lot of people you don't really go to school for it. Although you learn lots to support you in your efforts. And so to be a member of an association that understands the business it's just amazing. We joke among the women's groups, and I think it would be true for the men as well. You know, in college, we're so competitive, and we're always, you know, we've got quota and we've got GPAs, and we're always competing against the gals or men next door. And it isn't like that when you get out of college, and especially when you're in a position like this. We joke that could switch desk chairs, and no matter the issues, we are so similar. We could step into each other's roles, no matter the difference in chapter size, budget, location. And because we're such a wonderful support to each other, I think that makes it happen. When I think of the FEA, it truly is all about the people. I remember still snippets of an acceptance speech I made when I became president. And that was the theme, Mike. It was, we do things, we join things, or don't join things because of the people. My predecessor, Marcia Bond, she was one of a handful of women execs who were invited to join the all-male Fraternity Executives Association back in the 80s. And kind of like our founders in college, she and her peers knew they had to be better than the men, you know, better prepared, on time, all of this, because all the men were judging them to see whether or not women were the right fit for this organization. And certainly they were, and we are today. So it's those connections that with the people, and especially, oh my goodness, let's talk about living through a pandemic. I've never relied on those professional relationships more than I have in 2020. And I think all my peers would agree that it's just amazing to have those like-minded people.
Yeah, that support structure is no question. That was really
Absolutely.
instrumental. I don't know that I would be able to have done half the things that we got accomplished without those connections, because I was really relying on my counterparts to say, have you seen this problem? What do you
Right.
do? You know?
Yeah.
And it's just a great group of individuals that only want to help. And so when I see the feuding or the competition on local chapters, I'm like, on a national level, you have no idea. We will drop everything, whatever we're
Right.
doing, and help each other in a second. because we
Absolutely.
know that, that it's important for everybody to be successful, and we all bring different talents and different tools to the table. And I think if we stick together, I mean, sky's the limit. And so,
Right, right. Absolutely. And there's a role for everyone. And our industry is too important to be fighting among ourselves. We've got, there's a role for everyone to play. And that's what we're doing. And that's how we just keep going.
yeah. So obviously, Kappa Alpha Theta in 2020 celebrated 150 years of sisterhood. What a milestone. And I'm just wondering, Betty Locke, she wanted full membership in an organization offering friendship and support back in 1867. And I'm just wondering, are fraternities and sororities in line today with what Betty had in mind back in 1867? What do you think?
Yeah, don't you wonder? I
Yeah.
don't think, and I've done a lot of research on our founders, and I don't believe she ever spoke about men's fraternities back in college, or she lived into the late 1930s. And after all, it was a men's group that denied her the full membership as a student. And thank goodness the members of the DePauw Phi Gamma Delta chapter had the sense to deny her membership. And for Betty, the idea of forming a women's fraternity was second to getting that college education. And it was an education as good as any man's. And when she was asked about her college experience late in life, she said, we realized somehow that we weren't going to college just for ourselves alone, but for all the girls who would follow after us, if we could just win out. So I do believe that today, sorority done right is exactly what she had in mind. Women supporting other women in their pursuits of an education. We've seen fraternity and sorority not done right. And she would just be beside herself. I don't know. I just can't imagine establishing an organization like a fraternity or a sorority that ends up going international and seeing some of the unwise decisions today's students make or have made in the past. But no doubt about it, sorority done right is exactly what she had in mind.
Amen. I think you're absolutely right.
Women doing it right.
Yeah. Betty would be proud. I have to agree with you there. And you bring up the pandemic that we're going through right now. It's been a really difficult year, as you know, for fraternity members, for sorority members. In your opinion, how can our chapters continue to grow and to flourish this spring, given all the restrictions that might be in place for them right now?
Well, but Mike, here's the thing. With respect to college chapters, young people are resilient and tech savvy. I mean, they truly are. I know there are struggles, but they're good. I watch how my sons deal with technology, and they look at me and how I deal, and it's just so far apart. So the fact that these students have recruited awesome members, and that was beginning, well, last fall, now we're into this current spring, virtually boggles my mind. So they're smart. The best thing we can do really is get out of their way. And I have great faith in our students that if you give them the expectation, or they give themselves the expectation that we want to increase our size, the local Panhellenic says we can pledge 35 women. Okay, give us the rules and we'll get it done. Rather than alumni, I'll put myself in that category. I'm not sure I could get my head around, well, what do you mean you're not going to visit the house and you're not going to? So I really think today's students are so smart. I think they've always been smart, but I have great faith in them. They're doing a wonderful job. And it's amazing I do just stand in awe of today's college student.
Mhm.
And member recruitment is no exception. They're really good at getting to the heart of the matter and connecting in any way they can.
Mhm.
And what I've really been surprised about too, and is our alumni program. Of course, the thetas of every age want to connect. And the fact that they are gathering in these virtual, whether it's a chat room, whatever it is, as you noted, we just celebrated Founders Day yesterday.
Mhm.
Who would have thought that we would have virtual Founders Day celebrations? I mean, I'm glad it wasn't up to me to figure it out because I couldn't have, but there are people who can, and in some ways, I think we're more connected than we have been because we've had to work harder to get there.
Yes, that's wonderful. Listen, the confidence you have in today's undergraduates, I think is fantastic. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Gen Z is more driven than any other generation that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And we both have kids that are of this age, this Gen Z age, and I'm blown away by their capabilities. Sometimes people find out what I do for a living, that I speak to college students, and they're say all these bad things like, oh, they must be lazy. I'm like, I don't know who you're working with, but the students I'm working with are way driven.
And it's so hard. Like, oh my goodness. We've just had the experience of our college age son coming home for an extended period of time over that winter break and realize he's very accomplished, but he doesn't do it our way. I love to sleep, and how he can function after 9:30 p.m. is beyond me. But so that was just people talk about it all the time, but it's just a strange awakening and a good thing to keep in mind that people don't always do it the way we did it. And so college kids figure it out, and they're super smart. They just have to be allowed to do it their own way.
Yeah. I like it. I really do. I want to talk about the Theta Foundation for a moment, because I know they support the sororities educational programs as well as the international philanthropy, CASA. So can you talk to our audience a little bit about the international philanthropy and maybe the impact that you've seen over the years in working with them?
Oh my gosh. CASA. It stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. And essentially, a CASA is a child's voice in court. And when I think most of my time in Indianapolis, once I got settled here, I became a trained CASA volunteer. And a child ends up in court, whether it's a custody issue, a safety issue, and some reason the child has been taken from his or her home. And you have all these people competing, all these voices on this one situation and this one little child. And the judge has the opportunity to appoint a CASA, this one adult who steps into this situation and speaks up for the child. Whether I would go and visit the child's teachers, the parents, the grandparents, the pediatricians, all these different people who were involved in this little kid's life or older kid's life. And I would report my research back to the judge so she or he could make the best decision for the future of that child. And it's kind of scary. I didn't spend much time thinking about the gravity of my responsibility, because that would have freaked me out, because here this little kid's future is in your hands. And just, ugh, it's just amazing. And to see that our work, the work of a CASA, the gratefulness of a judge is amazing, because we're able to do the research that can't be done on a packed court schedule. And now, of course, you have to be 21 to be a trained volunteer in that capacity. But our college chapters, especially the money they raise for their local CASA organization, oftentimes the CASA is organized by state county. And so those county agencies depend on those students for their volunteer hours, helping them administratively, raising money so they can support more children. It's just amazing. And you can't let yourself get caught up in some of the sadness. You just have to remember that you're helping one child at a time, and doing your very best. So it's just an amazing opportunity, and it's one of those philanthropies. When we adopted CASA, we were looking for a national organization that also has the hands-on local experience, and CASA fit those parameters for us wonderfully. Another thing about our foundation is, and it goes back to our founders and their quest for higher education, the amount of funds that are raised for undergraduate and graduate scholarships presented to Thetas is amazing. And I guess my personal goal is, I wish we had a Theta scholarship in the hands of every qualified Theta who applies for a scholarship. You started talking about how you're looking at colleges for your kids.
Yes.
Expensive.
Very.
And if Theta can just play one small piece in a Theta student's quest for a higher education, that's what it's all about, because that ties all the way back to DePauw in the late 1860s. It's just cool.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic work. I love watching sisters when they find out that CASA is obviously very closely tied to Kappa Alpha Theta. They're overjoyed. You find sisters that said, I had a CASA when I was a kid.
Right.
And, and it just really resonates with the members. So I like to see that the members themselves really believe that CASA is doing good work and want to do everything they can to help.
You bet.
Yeah, so I love that. That's really good. Now, we should really talk about some of the other CEOs and executive directors out there. I just saw that Mark Timmies of Phi Kappa Phi is getting ready to retire in 2022. I can probably count on one hand some of the other executive directors that are left from that era. I'm thinking about Mick Wilson from Kappa Sigma, Larry Weiss at Kappa Alpha Order, Wynn Smiley at ATO, Bonnie Wunsch on the women's side, who we recently spoke to on the podcast from Alpha Epsilon Phi. And in June of 2022, you're going to step down as CEO. And now, Jennifer Schmaltz, she's going to be stepping in with more than 15 years of experience on staff. I'm just wondering, what makes now the right time for you to step away?
Well, our industry can be quite unpredictable. And while I love change, I also love structure and order. And to me, the Theta enterprise, it's a large and sophisticated operation that makes sense to step away in an orderly manner. I first brought my retirement plans to our board in 2018. We'd been planning our sesquicentennial celebration for years by then. And it made sense. It only seemed fair to see the organization through that celebration of December 2020. Well, who knew that it would be such a year? So essentially seeing the organization through a pandemic, I guess, is another way to look at it. And two, it didn't seem right to leave at the close of such a significant event for our organization. So yeah, I offered to stay through the next convention, which is the summer of 2022. It just seemed like a good time to close the books. And I'm just so grateful now that Jenny's appointment is public, we can more easily discuss our transition plans.
Right.
And after 39 years in one place, it might seem as though things just happen. I've got to commit some time to thinking about how things have happened through the years, so I can leave something, a good transition for Jenny.
That's fantastic. I mean, obviously, Kappa Alpha Theta, all fraternities and sororities have an ongoing mission. And we as leaders within these organizations, we're holding the torch for a moment, right? And we're going to pass that torch to somebody else at some point, and we want them to run with it so that way our organization continues to flourish and thrive, because they're going to outlast us. There's no question.
You bet.
The organization has an ongoing mission. I mean, it's almost like, the United States of America, where you have George Washington stepping down and basically saying, we need a transition, right? I'm going to serve 2 terms, and that's
there
it.
You go.
Because we have an ongoing mission. I suppose George Washington could have given it to his child or something like that, but he didn't. He said we need orderly transition. We need a plan.
You bet. That's it. That's totally it.
I admire that. And this has been quite a ride for you, obviously. I mean, what's next for Betsy? Have you thought about that?
That is so weird, Mike, because I've had this retirement on my mind for a while now. Our youngest graduates from high school this summer, and that will give us that school year, his first year in college, to clear all the clutter we've accumulated in Indiana, because we'll be moving to California. And my husband was born and raised there, and we'll be settling in on the central coast of California. Amazing place. I remember when I first visited there, and seeing all the fields of all the vegetables and all the stuff I would see in the grocery store in Indiana or Iowa, and not real, I don't know, it was just kind of a silly moment, but it's an amazing place, and I really look forward to it, but I don't know what I'm gonna do. We were there for Christmas, a couple months ago, whenever that was. And I remember saying to our boys, I'm like, geez, I need to be thinking about what I'm going to do. I just can't sit here all day. But as much as I think I might want to hang out in bed all day, I'll get totally. So I need to find something to do. Yeah. We will be living just about 30 minutes south of Cal Poly, San Luis, where we do have a chapter, and it would be fun. I haven't been a chapter advisor in decades, but that's it. Just moving west.
Wow, good for you. I mean, that's a beautiful area of the country, and obviously that chapter would be very, very fortunate to get
I don't know about that,
but
it would be fun.
It would be a lot of fun. And hey, listen, if you ever want to speak to sorority women all over the country, you let me know at Creek University. We're going to make some space for you.
Yeah,
that's awesome. That is really, really good. This has been so much fun. And we do love good food here at Fraternity Foodie. So, before we go, I'm wondering, what restaurants do you and Jim like to go to in the Indianapolis area?
Oh my gosh. We, hands down, it's sushi from Ocean World.
Oh, nice.
Oh my gosh. It's just, I even remember they know they've seen our boys grow up. Every time the sweet Japanese ladies look at them and tell them how tall they are, and they're really sweet with these ladies. It's wonderful food. It's a wonderful family atmosphere. That who thought you could get awesome sushi in Indiana?
I was going to say, not a typical go-to for all my Indianapolis folks, but that's wonderful to have that locally.
Yeah, I don't know. So, gosh, Fraternity Foodie, hands down. In Indianapolis. So when you come me when we can be out and about again.
Absolutely. I would absolutely love that. We got
There
to
we
bring
go.
Jim too. I would love to
Yep.
sit down with Jim and have some more conversation there. But this has been so much fun. I really appreciate you taking the time out to talk with all of us today. This has been great. Please send my best to Jim.
I will.
And to our audience, if you like this conversation with Betsy, please like it, share it with other Thetas that might want to hear her words. I think it's so important to capture that on tape so that way future generations can go and look at it and talk about it. I think this has been really, really wonderful. I just want to say how grateful I am for our friendship. It's meant the world to me, and I just wanted to tell you that in person.
Oh, you're sweet.
I don't know. I'm looking forward to some sushi in the near future.
You bet. All right. It's a date. Oh, thanks, Mike, for having me.
This has been great. All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you to our audience. We'll see you on another episode of Fraternity Foodie. Bye for now.